Okay, so there has been a lot of development in the case of Suchir Balaji, the OpenAI whistleblower, who was going to testify against Sam Altman, the founder and CEO of OpenAI, until he was mysteriously bumped off in his apartment after his picture in an interview with him appeared in the New York Times. Well, originally the police had reported his death as a suicide, but his mum knew that wasn't the case, and she's now released photos from the crime scene, which shows that there was a struggle and there was blood everywhere. And she showed the photos on an interview she did with Tucker Carlson. And last week she filed a lawsuit against the authority for not doing a proper investigation, for lying and for covering up the details of his death, which was obviously a murder. And in the Tucker Carlson interview, she let us know that her son had also planned to be in touch with Annie Altman, Sam Altman's sister, and since his death, she has filed a lawsuit against her brother for molesting her for 10 years as a child. And what's crazy is neither of these stories are getting anywhere near the news attention they should be, because these two are trying to let the world know how dangerous AI is for humanity and how everyone in power is covering for its founder. His mother, Paulina Ramararo, said everybody is suppressed, nobody is ready to come up and tell the truth. And meanwhile, a Chinese version of OpenAI was released called DeepSeek, which apparently cost a fraction of the price that OpenAI did to put together. And the American and British media weren't very happy about that, and they're still trying to push conspiracies, maybe to justify its worth, that it's gonna overpower humans and save mankind. So in this video, we're gonna look at all of this, as it's been hidden from us when all of our governments are investing heavily in this technology. So the first thing we hear in the interview is his parents commissioned their own autopsy report, which Tucker Carlson says he's never seen the like of before. We hear that it was the funeral home that said his cause of death didn't sound right and that they should get their own autopsy done. We hear again that Suchir was a very gifted child. He went to the University of California in Berkeley. He played a lead role in the development of ChatGPT-4 while he worked at OpenAI. His role was scooping data from the internet to feed the OpenAI model, and his former boss was John Schuman, who also left the company in August of 24. And I noticed he recently tweeted, "We only know how to train models to reason on tasks like math calculations and puzzles, where there's an objective ground truth." So there it is, it's not true, it can reason like a human. But Suchir has had no acknowledgement from OpenAI for his role in its development. He wrote a dissertation paper at age 14, he was offered a job at the website Quora at 17, and he had exceptional abilities. He explains his views on generative AI on his website, suchir.net. Like, it can't give accurate answers because it takes its information from chat forums like Quora and Reddit. And it was all the lawsuits being filed against them that made him understand they were misusing copyright rules. He also had enough money to live on and stay on in his San Francisco apartment due to the value of his OpenAI shares. He was far from a depressed, disgruntled ex-employee. He was a custodian witness against his former company, and his statements are on sealed court documents. He was proud of being honest about his discovery. He had another interview planned with Kennedy and news media. He stood up for humanity. He was not depressed. He had come back from holiday, backpacking with his school friends. He had just celebrated his 26th birthday the day before. He had packages ordered. He had booked a holiday with his dad that day. And he wanted to start his own non-profit. And he was in the middle of cleaning his teeth and getting ready for bed in his bathroom when this alleged suicide took place.
Custodian witness is very, very important. He had the documents against OpenAI. That was on 18th, 22nd. He just came back from vacation from LA and Catalina Island the same night. They have attacked him and killed him.
But you know, because you read it in the New York Times, that your son had given journalists papers that he says implicated OpenAI in crime.
Yes. And also, on December 2nd, Suchir had an interview planned with Associated Press, Matt O'Brien. On December 2nd, Suchir did not attend. 3rd, they called on his phone. By then we had his phone. My husband took phone call and he found out that Suchir wanted to take legal action against OpenAI. He wanted to give the witness. By then, this news was not out yet that Suchir was a custodian witness, but we got it. Then all we did was hurrying up the second autopsy, private autopsy. Moment we heard that This was his initiative and he didn't make it to do that.
Your son was in a position to really threaten OpenAI.
Well, it's not, his intent was not to threaten. He just cared about people. He cared about humanity. He writes in his article in New York Times as well as a publication, he believes the way the AI is currently without any regulation is a harm to humanity. He stood up for a cause and he lost his life for a cause. He's a martyr. Obviously, he's a martyr. And then he never hesitated. He put his life at risk.
So they established that there was nothing to indicate that he took his own life.
Did he ever say to you that he felt his life was threatened? Was he worried?
He had concrete plans. He wanted to do some work for humanity. That's the last day when we spoke. Last conversation with Suchir in person was that. He had a non-profit in mind. And he didn't want to take the salary for his work. He said, Mom, I have enough resources. I don't even need to get paid. I want to serve humanity. And he wanted to work in neuroscience and machine learning combination. Using that, I think I've seen on his desktop one of the project for future of doctor visit. Since we haven't unlocked his email and laptop yet, we have to discover that. But we know, he discussed with me, it's a 1-year plan. He said, give me a 1-year time. You'll know everything.
Did he ever talk to you about Sam Altman? Did you ever talk to your son about Sam Altman?
No, we refused to.
You refused to?
We refused to talk to Sam Altman.
But did your son ever talk to you about Sam Altman? Did he ever say anything about Sam Altman?
Not to me, but to his friends a lot. When he was in Catalina Islands, he spoke a lot against him. He literally didn't like him. In fact, I've seen his chat log saying that he wanted to work with Annie Altman in her non-profit work.
And that would be Sam's sister. Who was accused him of sexual abuse.
Yes.
Really? He wrote that down?
Yes. So he knew what personality Sam Altman had. And his main concerns were the lies.
The lies.
Yeah. He was lying a lot. And my son is very ethical and he couldn't stand it.
It's very clear that Suchir Balaji was very disturbed by what he found out about Sam. Previously, he'd stood by him when he was fired from OpenAI and threatened to resign with all the other staff unless he was reinstated. And knowing that he wanted to team up with his sister, who's been speaking out against him for a long time, is a big deal. So next they move into the timeline of how she found out her son was dead. When his parents couldn't get any answer from him after 3 days and they couldn't get the apartment security to go round and do a proper welfare check, they reported him missing to the police. So by the time the police enter the apartment, he's been dead for 3 days. And at 1 o'clock on the 26th, she goes to the apartment and the police enter and she's not allowed in. And they make her wait outside for hours.
2 o'clock, 2 officers came. They went inside. 20 minutes they came back and said, we're waiting for 2 more officers. We have security protocol. We can't go inside. And they said at 2 o'clock, they said, ma'am, you can go back home. We'll inform you in 5 to 6 hours. I said, I'm not going anywhere. They told me it's going to take some time for the next 2 officers to come. I said, let it be. Please give me the phone number. I'll contact them and find out if there's any way we can expedite it. My son's safety is in question. I cannot wait any longer. And then at 3:20, I saw a big white van coming. And my heart sank seriously.
So they knew as they were speaking to you that your son was dead, but didn't tell you?
They didn't tell.
That's disgusting. That's inhuman. Sorry.
It is. And you know what? They're asking me to go home. And how I knew my son was dead is looking at the white van. At that moment, I knew ambulance didn't come. And instead of, even then I was optimistic, okay, maybe ambulance wasn't available. They sent another van. And when I just saw a stretcher that came out, I went and spoke to the officers who are the medical examiners. They said, we have a dead person in the apartment. That's how I came to know.
A cause of death of suicide was determined within 40 minutes by the medical examiner's office with no police investigation. There's been no forensic analysis and the crime scene is still intact. Yet the medical examiner is insisting he knows better and that there's no evidence of foul play. But when you quickly research the history of San Francisco's medical examiner's office, which handles dead bodies, there's a long history of corruption and ineptitude. For 10 years until 2021, they were so bad at submitting official records that their office went unaccredited. And in 2020, a medical examiner staff lab analysis, someone who worked there was pulled over and arrested for speeding whilst high on meth in Utah, and equipment and drugs were still in the car, which was described as the tip of the iceberg. So in other words, it doesn't look like they do what they're meant to do and what they're paid to do.
The official explanation is your son shot himself once in the head and the bullet entered the brainstem and extinguished life immediately.
Can I say something there?
Yes.
It didn't touch his brainstem at all.
Oh.
It didn't even touch his brain, and the angle is downwards.
Yes. Well, I'm saying the official explanation is he shot himself once in the head, he died.
Yes.
But these photographs show that that's not at all what happened, because there's blood all over the apartment. There's blood on the door, on the floor, in the bathroom. There's blood everywhere. So that right there, just employing common sense, tells you that that the person from whom that blood came, your son, presumably, did not have a fatal brain injury, at least when he was bleeding. I mean, something was going on in the apartment,
Yes.
right? The second thing that jumps out is that there is a tuft of hair that's not hair. It's from a wig.
It's from a wig. And there's a clip scene.
It's okay. So tell us what that is for people who don't know. It's a part of a clip-in wig.
Like there is some kind of plastic band or something that fits the wig on the head. We can see that coming out behind the door.
Yes.
And that's obvious evidence that no crime scene investigators or police can miss. They just ignored everything that showed murder and they picked up everything that showed a cover-up suicide. Within 40 minutes, they concluded they haven't even picked up critical things like a bag with blood that has my son's saliva in it. They haven't picked that up. And how could they miss hairs falling all over from the wig?
Even before they got the second autopsy done, the funeral home told them his eyes are gone with a gun wound. Don't see his face. That could not have been self-inflicted. And when they did get the autopsy done by a Dr. Joseph Cohen, there was shown to be an injury on the side of the head. So his mum's gone back to the medical officer's office with all of this.
I spoke to medical examiner's office, executive director. I told him there's a head injury, there's sign of struggle in the bathroom. He just declared that I'm the decision-making authority of state of California. I decide the cause of death. And when I brought up we'll have federal investigation, there was a momentary setback in his voice on the phone, but still they're holding on to suicide.
So Dr. Cohen's autopsy, and this is grisly, I'm sorry, but proves that the bullet was fired at what angle?
Yeah, it's downward angle, that someone cannot shoot themselves.
Right. So in other words, if this were a suicide, your son would have had to have held the gun to his forehead coming
from
down.
The top. He was made to sit. If you look at the same thing, like so the victim was sitting down. He was made to sit. Someone standing, he shot him down. In fact, Balaji and I, my husband and I are going to create a virtual reality. Once we get all the evidence, we'll create a virtual reality video and present it to court what exactly happened to him at that moment. He was brushing his teeth before going to bed. He was attacked from behind on the head. That's why there's fallen dustbin, there's fallen toothpick, and his earbud has fallen in two different directions because of the head impact. And we believe after that he was either electrocuted or he was, he was paralyzed from the head injury. And then they just held him up, made him sit and shot him. But also we know that we are waiting for further report, but that may not be the cause of death.
So the autopsy showed that the bullet did not touch his brain.
Yes, and also since I called the apartment on 23rd at 12:15 p.m., it rang once and it went to voicemail. That makes me believe the killers were still there in the apartment. Again, we need to verify all that. We can do something called geofencing. Through that, we can figure out who was there, who was visiting that complex and all that information. That's exactly why we need thorough investigation.
You don't need to be a detective to imagine that if someone's going to commit a murder, he might be wearing a wig as he goes into the apartment. So that right there, considering your son didn't wear a wig as a 26-year-old male.
Those hairs were not his hair. We have the picture of his hairs. His hair is fallen down in the bathroom sink. That is different from the wig in the hair in the wig.
The conversation then turns to how deep the corruption goes and how Sam Altman is involved.
That's what we want to do. We want to make incredibly capable AI and then make it. We want people to always be confused about how we can offer it so cheaply.
We definitely need some serious help here from the authorities.
Okay, so the authorities would begin with the mayor of San Francisco.
Mayor of San Francisco. Actually, Sam Altman is on the transition committee for the new governor. He's a
new mayor.
friend of.
The new mayor. Sam Altman's a friend of the new mayor.
Yes.
Okay. So let's move up. Then you go to the governor of California, Gavin Newsom.
We are first trying to meet the district attorney of San Francisco, DA of San Francisco. We probably are going to get an appointment sometime next week or later this week.
It's mid-January. Your son was killed in November.
We have not been getting any appointment. We wrote to everyone. We wrote to Rob Bonta. We wrote to DA. We didn't get any appointment from any of them. He didn't want to listen to it. He didn't want to pay attention to any of the things that we were saying. And the worst struggle here is the first attorney. He was reluctant to help us. When he said when medical examiner's office said suicide, he didn't want to fight because they have been threatened, obviously. Then we hired a second attorney. He got a crime scene investigator. And our attorney said, we'll give you explanation of every blood mark. And he came back this Monday and he gave explanation. And none of that explanation he gave corroborates to what happened in the apartment based on what we see. That means even the crime scene investigator was bought. He gave inaccurate results. If both the attorneys are like this, then where do we go? We definitely need some serious help here. 5 weeks were wasted by our first attorney. He does nothing. He just keeps prolonging.
Yeah.
He wasted 5 weeks. Then we hired a second attorney. It's been almost 2 weeks since we hired. But now we just didn't trust any of these people. We got a report from someone else. And now we're coming to media because these people, neither the authorities nor the attorneys are helping us.
This needs to go to the Department of Justice, I think, in the Trump administration.
I did write.
You did?
Yeah. We haven't heard yet because it's only been a few days.
Yes.
We did write to them. Everybody is suppressed. No one has come in our favor. In fact, even our attorneys whom we hired have been made to tell it's a suicide to us. Every day from every different angle, there is a push for us that it's a suicide. But we parents, we know and we want to fight for justice for our beloved son.
On what grounds are they saying it's very likely he killed himself?
Okay, that's because of the cover-up. Remember, there was a gun near him. He owned a gun and they put a shell casing and 4 bullets near it. They made it look like it. So there are both the evidences, right, for the medical examiner to pick up. He picked up the one that looks suicidal. He ignored the one that looks like homicide. That's what it is.
So now to Sam Altman. What contact with Sam Altman have you had since your son died?
We contacted HR for 401k plan details. Until then, no one from OpenAI ever contacted us. They gave the PR report that they're supporting the family. How? Suchir had obviously put parents in his emergency contact, right? They got the death news on December 13th. They made no attempt to contact us. And when we reached out to HR, Sam Altman said he wants to talk to us. By then, we already knew Suchir was, his presence or his living would have been a threat to AI industry in general. I wouldn't want to name one company, but eventually it's going to expose everything, right? So we didn't want to talk to Sam Altman. And then they said we provide employee assistance program. Though he was a former employee, we said we have medical insurance, we don't need it. Then they pushed us saying, we want to get you on a Zoom call ASAP to go over his stock options. Then our response to that is, why are you in a hurry? We are not. We've lost our son. We are grieving. Money is not important to us. Please talk to a probate attorney. And we had a probate attorney talk to the HR. This is our
They wanted to talk about his stock options?
Yeah, that's why they wanted to get us on a Zoom call.
Do you think that Sam Altman was involved in your son's death?
We don't know. We need to investigate it.
Yes.
We can't say anything at this time. But one thing I know for sure is if he was deposed, there are few organizations who could have been impacted. For that matter, there are a lot of AI companies which violate copyright law. And we don't know what OpenAI wanted to hide when my son deposed. What was the wrongdoing that he would have brought up, not just the copyright law. That's exactly we need FBI to investigate thoroughly. Was there any criminal activity? Was there any illegal activity? We don't know, right? Why? Why would they silence him? What would he have spoken? If it's just the copyright law, do you think these big organizations like Microsoft and OpenAI care? No. They don't care about it, right? Because they have money and power. What else was involved in the deposition, in the testimony that took my son's life? His own statement, we heard from few former employees of OpenAI. There are certain wrongdoings there.
Like what?
We can't say something that someone shared, right? So I would want to keep it more, just overview. That's something like that. So that is the reason they're hiding. And you know what? If we come and tell openly, our life could be at risk. But we are taking the risk and coming out and telling publicly that's the reason our son was killed. Because he knew something that was going on. Keeping in mind, he was feeding the data, right? Pre-training data. So
to be clear, you think this is not simply about OpenAI stealing, copyrighted material. There's more than that.
More than that, 100% sure. Because copyright data, obviously, my friends and I were all talking. These companies, they get many lawsuits like this, right?
Sure.
Do they really care about it? No.
What is the kind of thing they do care about? What kind of crimes do you think they would kill someone over?
Stealing some data that against that could cause a violation. Possibly, they might be stealing some data
from the U.S. government, from other government,
something like that. Maybe government is involved. We don't know. We're speculating.
Do you think that we will find out? Like, how will the rest of us find out what your son testified to?
That's exactly why we call out to President Trump to do a thorough investigation. We want the FBI director to be assigned to investigate this. This is not just about copyright. This is about a lot of other things that are going on that could cause harm to society potentially, not just in my son's death. There's something harmful that need to be evaluated and thoroughly investigated. That's exactly why they're covering up a suicide. Why do you think medical examiners, the executive director would come and tell? Why do you think nobody gives us appointment? Because there's some kind of foul play and there's strong power behind a medical examiner.
So you're saying that AI itself poses a threat to the world and that your son understood this. Did you know that California was this corrupt?
Yeah, we know it's very corrupt. That's exactly why we're requesting FBI thorough investigation. We did speak to an agent, I think last Friday. We're waiting for that agent to get someone assigned, if special agent or something. And we also know that there's a transition period in the government. Some may be moved, transferred, some may be leaving. So we just thought, okay, let's wait. Meanwhile, we did all the groundwork that we needed to do. We have the evidence. We are here in the media. We're telling the media now we want the new oncoming federal government to intervene because Newsom, we know, Trump himself makes a lot of statements against Newsom. So we wrote to Rokhanna. There are two things here. One is wrongful death. One is a whistleblower. The whistleblower comes under federal because the lawsuit was filed in New York and he was a custodian witness. So we have a backing from federal government involvement. If it's just the state, corrupt state would fight against it. Since there is federal, they can overtake the federal aspect. We are writing to Federal Trade Commission now, today or tomorrow. And we want them to do a quiet investigation of the case. We have a top attorney in whistleblowers that's helping us. Pro bono means contingency basis. We will work with him and bring the truth out. We don't believe in state government at all. We know how corrupt it is, especially in San Francisco Bay Area. It's very, very corrupt. We don't believe in the system. Unless, we change the governor, we won't believe anything will happen here. We need to go to federal.
Just recently, Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been trying to shut down and remove members of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So what happens when they're gone? And Elon Musk and Sam Altman have been involved in a back and forth on Twitter while I've been making this video because there's an AI summit going on. There's a world summit going on about this product that one of the only people who dared to speak out about it was brutally murdered in their apartment, and now every authority is trying to cover it up. And something I always say in my videos, if little old me can work out what con and how detrimental this product is to the average person, why does the media continue to talk about it with such reverence and such little understanding? None of these people have any ethics or morals. They just want control. Control of people, control of data. The New York Times reported that Elon Musk led a $97.4 billion bid to control OpenAI. OpenAI on behalf of a group of investors. It's not Elon Musk putting up the money, it's the investors, because they don't want the value of their other stocks going down. But the news doesn't report it like that. They just want you to think about how rich and powerful Elon Musk is. Why hasn't the New York Times blown up the story of Suchir Balaji's death? He was going to be their key witness. They've not even got back to his parents, and he was in contact with the Associated Press. There were loads of agencies trying to sue OpenAI. Their executives are now employing armed security guards. And with all this being said, it's a miracle that Annie Altman, Sam Altman's sister, who currently lives in Hawaii, has filed a complaint against Sam in Missouri that at the family home when she was 3 years old and he was 12 years old, he began to interfere with her sexually, and that he groomed and manipulated her, leading to full-blown sexual assault. And what's interesting is she's asking for the minimum amount that the case will allow for, which is $75,000. A very small amount considering how much he's meant to be worth. That family home is valued at well over $1 million. She was denied her inheritance after her father passed away. She claimed her father had to work right up until his death because Sam didn't want to help him with his medical bills. And the rest of the family have kind of ostracized her over time and made her seem like she has mental health issues, which she probably does, but then look at Sam Altman. He literally walks, talks, and acts like a psycho, whereas she sounds quite grounded. I think it's really significant that Suchir Balaji had written down that he wanted to work with her after he worked for her brother for 4 years. And like his mum said, they hadn't shown any support after his death, other than pressuring them to talk about his stock options on a Zoom call. The same guy that is supposedly looking out for humankind. That's how he treats the guy that helped him build his company for 4 years. The details of the lawsuit are pretty gruesome and pretty hard to find. There is one woman who's been documenting and reporting on Annie Altman's allegations since they first started in 2021, who I linked in a previous video, and she has updated the article. And if you search for the lawsuit online, you will find hundreds of articles where Sam Altman has denied the claims. And one thing she has said in the past is that he suppresses her in the algorithm and shadow bans her from platforms. It couldn't be more obvious that this is true. And then people have posted examples of when ChatGPT says she's not his real sister, and that can be found on her Twitter account. It is just really interesting that she went into doing sex work for a living, as she has stated that Sam was something like her first sex work client, and that he used her to help him figure out his sexuality. And she alleges that he groomed and manipulated her into believing that his sexual acts were her idea, despite the fact that Annie Altman was under the age of 5 years old when the sexual abuse began, and Sam Altman was nearly a teenager. And he apparently returned home early from a school camp he was on. There is a lot of evidence that there's a strong link between child sex abuse and becoming sexually promiscuous. And then there's all the other things she's had since a teenager, like anxiety, PTSD, eating disorders. She's went on the pill at 15, and she's had a lot of problems in her own sexual relationships. So this is all painting a picture of a situation that should be taken a lot more seriously if she did have the algorithm on her side. I don't think it's overdramatic to say that all of the social media platforms and all of these tech companies, the way they're interfering with our governments, Google, Microsoft, Meta, the tech bros and the investors, SoftBank, to name but a few, are conspiring together to take over our lives with whatever they think this AI technology is going to do. They've corrupted every element of our authority with their lobbying and influence, and the media is blindly going along with it. They're just scared to say anything negative about Sam Altman or OpenAI, or point out the very obvious fact that machine learning is done by people. So if you've made it this far in the video, please let me know in the comments how you feel about Suchir Balaji's mother and his father. They're literally risking their life to speak out. And Annie Altman, please take the time to look into her history, what she's been saying, and if she deserves your respect. They just seem to be more on the right side of history from where I'm sitting.